Now, when you open Excel, you arrive at what's called the home screen. Okay. It contains a list of the recent Excel files you might have opened. It also contains a list of Excel files you might have pinned or favorited. Okay. And we're going to go with a blank file. A file in Excel is called a workbook. Okay. And a file in Excel is always saved with the extension .xlsx. Okay, so that's how you know it's an Excel file, because the file will always have the .xlsx extension. So we're going to select the blank workbook, double click on it, create. Okay, so it should look like this. If you're using a Windows computer, it might look a little bit different, but hopefully not that different. Now, by default, when you open a blank worksheet or a file, Excel gives it a name. Okay, so if you want to change that name, okay, the name is given on the top bar over here. Okay, for me it says book 3, it might say book 1 for you. To change the name, simply double click on it. Okay, and you can change the name. Okay, so I'm going to call it my first workbook. Okay, and you can also change the location where the file is saved on your computer. Now, for this course, it's very important that you remember where you save the file. Oftentimes, students, okay, they open a file, they complete the assignment, but then they forget where it was saved. And so when they want to upload it, they can't find the file. Okay, I recommend saving your files on the desktop. Maybe create a folder on your desktop to submit all your personal finance Excel files. I'm going to select on my Mac, and on the desktop, I'm going to select this file or workbook called my first workbook. Okay, save it. Now, each individual workbook or file in Excel is made up of different pages that we call worksheets. Okay, so there are one or more worksheets in every workbook. And unlike, let's say, Word, where pages have numbers, here worksheets have names or labels. Okay, and when you open up the workbook for the first time, it's going to open up a blank worksheet for you, and by default it's going to give it the name sheet 1, and you can see the name of the worksheet, okay, on the tab on the bottom left hand corner. It says sheet 1. Okay, if you want to change it, you can double click on it. That makes it editable, and you can change it to whatever you want. Okay, but we're not going to bother with that right now. But if you had a lot of worksheets and you wanted there to be some kind of an order, okay, you can number the worksheets, name them, and so forth. Now you will see these menus on the top called ribbons. Okay, so there's the home ribbon, the insert ribbon, draw, page layout, formulas, and so forth. And what these ribbons are basically a collection of icons that allow you to do particular things in Excel. Okay, home ribbon is the one that we're going to use the most. Now you will see that the worksheet is composed of a grid. Okay, there are these rectangles in a worksheet, and we call them cells in Excel, like CELLS, right? And any data or information that you want to record or store in a worksheet has to be inserted in one of these cells. Okay, now I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that you can see those cells bigger, and you can zoom in by using the zoom slider on the lower right hand corner. You'll see there's a zoom slider. Okay, the default zoom level is 100%, but if you want to zoom in more, you can move the slider to the right, and that's going to make the cells bigger, allow you to see the contents of the cell much better. Okay. Now, when you click on one of these cells, it gets highlighted, okay, or selected. So clicking once on any of these cells will select that cell, okay. Now, every cell in a worksheet has a name or a label or an address, sometimes also called a reference to the cell. So the cell that I have selected here, that's highlighted, okay, you will see that it is located in column B. So the cells are arranged in columns, right? And these columns are named with letters A, B, C, okay? Every worksheet has by default 16,000 columns, right? After they run out of single letters, then they go to AA, AB, AC, and so forth. Okay, so this cell is located in column B, and it is located in row 4. So every row in Excel is named or numbered, okay? And there's 1,000,000 rows in every worksheet, so you never have to worry about running out of rows, okay? So you have to be aware of the location of every cell, because the name or the address or the label of the cell is simply going to be its column and its row put together. So what's the name of this cell? The name of this cell is B4, okay? Also called the address of this cell, B4, okay? Now, in case you're having trouble figuring out what the address of this cell is, okay, you can look over on the upper right-hand area, and you will see, okay, the name of the cell that has been selected being displayed, B4. And if you select a different cell, you'll see that, okay, it'll show you a different name. So you have to be aware or be able to figure out the address or the reference to each cell, okay? Now, let's say I want to create a table to record my stock trades, okay? Because I need to figure out how much money I'm making or losing, how much taxes I owe, right? So Excel is great for doing things like that, right? So I'm going to create a table. Okay, first I'm going to type in a table name. So the table name, I'm going to give it, okay, and I'm going to insert the table name in cell A1. Now, to insert information in a cell, okay, you have to make it editable. And to make a cell editable, you double click on it. So if I double click on A1, you'll see a cursor starting to blink, which means that it's ready to receive information that you want to store there. And the information that I want to store in this cell is going to be the text, my stock trades. Okay, so I simply type it. Now, I want that information to be stored in this cell, and I want to move on to the next cell. So in order to do that, you can simply press enter, and you'll see that the cell A1 is no longer selected, and the selection is now cell A2, which means that whatever you typed in, cell A1, is now stored there, okay? And now if you want to type something in A2, you can go ahead and do that as well. Now, notice that the contents of the cell A1, they are kind of spilling over into cell B1. Okay, so they're intruding in cell B1 space. And it's not an issue right now because the cell B1 is empty. Okay, and so we don't have trouble if the contents of cell A1 are spilling into cell B1. Okay, but if you were to insert something in cell B1, okay, so let's say I want to say tax calculations, right? Now you'll see that once I save this text in cell B1 and I press enter, now you can see part of the contents of cell A1, okay, because they're hidden behind the contents of cell B1, right? So that can create an issue, right? So one solution to this problem is to expand the width of column A okay, so that you can see the contents of that cell A1 completely. So how would you expand the contents, the width of a column? So this is what you would do, okay. You would go to the cell that contains the name of the column that you want to expand. So, okay, I would hover my mouse around the column name A. And then I would point my mouse towards the right border of that cell until it turns into this particular shape. Okay, it's like a cross with a pointy arrow, with horizontal pointy arrows. Right? Now, what this tells you is that you have grabbed on to the right border of the column, and if you want to change that, okay, you want to change the location of that border, you can do that. So once this icon appears, instead of my pointer, I can click and drag the right hand column border, okay, a little bit. And when I let go, you will see that the width of column A has expanded. So I want you to follow along and do what I'm doing, okay, so that if you run into issues, you can tell me, right? So now you can see the contents of cell A1 more clearly. But I have like overdone it, right? I created too much width, right? Unnecessary space. So, you know, I might have to go back and reduce the width a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to go and do that so that, okay, there is no extra space. Okay. An alternative to that, okay, so if you want Excel to expand, okay, the column width just so that all the contents are fitting in, instead of trying to drag the border yourself, you can just double click on the border and it'll expand it, okay, just the right amount for you to be able to see the cell contents. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to create a table where I'm going to calculate how much money I made in each of my stock trades, and then I'm going to calculate tax that I owe on those stock trades. So I'm going to create a table by first creating headings for the columns that will make up my table. Okay, so I'm going to start, okay, I'm going to leave one row empty, and then I'm going to start from cell A3 where I'm going to type in my first column heading, and that's going to be my trade number. So I'm just going to type that in. Now, if you press enter, the selection will go to the cell below. But if you want to go to the cell on the right, instead of enter, you can just press tab and it'll do the same thing. It'll save the contents of the currently selected cell and move the selection to the cell on the right rather than the cell below. So tab to move to the right, enter to move down. Okay. So here I'm going to insert the heading for my second column. Okay, so this is going to be the stock name, and then I'm going to press tab again, and now I'm going to insert a column heading, my purchase price, okay, tab, my sale price, how much should I sell my stock for, and finally, okay, how much money I made in that stock trade. And the money or the profit that you make from buying and selling an asset such as stocks are called capital gains. So in this column, I'm going to calculate my capital gains for the trade. Now you'll see that, okay, purchase price is kind of hidden behind the contents of cell D3. So I can expand column C by once again double clicking on the right hand border of column C. It's going to expand it just to fit precisely. Okay. So here's trade number 1, stock name, let's say Tesla. Okay, let's say I bought it at $150, okay, and I sold it at $200 sale price, okay. Now these numbers 150 and 200, these are dollar values, and it would help if they looked like dollar values, right, with a dollar sign in front of them. So you can, okay, add a dollar sign in front of them, so it's clear that these are dollar values. But another thing you can do to achieve a similar result is to change the display formatting of the cell. So in the cell that contains the number 200, instead of typing in the dollar sign, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the formatting of this cell. So by default, okay, a cell has what is called a general formatting, and I'm going to change it to a currency formatting. So the way you do that is you go on the home ribbon, you find this bunch of icons that have to do with cell formatting, okay, and there's a drop down menu here, and by default the general formatting is selected, but if you click on the down arrow, it gives you other kind of formatting options, and I'm going to choose the currency option. And what it's going to do is going to change how the number that I entered is displayed, okay. It puts a dollar sign in front of it, and it also displays the number precisely up to 2 decimal points, right? That's going to be helpful because we don't always have whole numbers as our sale or purchase price, right? So it's going to be, okay, very convenient if we use this kind of formatting. Now another formatting that you might want to use is accounting formatting. So let's see what happens if we change the formatting to accounting formatting. It's the same, it's just that the dollar sign is way to the left of the cell, but otherwise it's the same. So we can use either, you know. I think the accounting the formatting looks nicer, so we can do that. Okay, I'm going to change this to accounting formatting as well. Okay. Now I can also pre-format cells before I enter values into them, right? So, you know, next time when we are recording prices, we're going to first pre-format and then enter the prices. Well, let's do that now. Okay, let's enter my second trade. Let's say my second trade is Apple, and let's say that I bought Apple for, okay, $110. Okay, oops, so it's not formatted correct, so I can go back and change the formatting, okay, but I don't want to do this individually for all cells, so I'm going to pre-format all the cells that I know are going to contain dollar values, okay, and I'm going to pre-format them all at the same time. So the way you do that is that you select all the cells whose formatting you want to change in one go, and you can select multiple cells, okay, by clicking on one cell and then dragging your pointer to the cell that you want to add to the selection, okay. And I know that I'm going to be adding more dollar values in the cells below, so I'm going to expand my selection by continuing to drag my pointer while clicking, okay. And once I am satisfied with the selection I have made, I'm going to let go my click, and now a whole bunch of cells have been selected. Okay. If you haven't done this before, selecting multiple cells at a time is going to require some practice, okay. So let me show that to you again, okay. You start with one cell that you want to be part of the selection, and then you click in the center of that cell, and with the click held down with your, okay, don't let the click go, okay, drag your finger across on all the cells that you want to be included in your selection. And then you let go. Okay. Now whatever changes I make to formatting will apply to all these cells. So I'm going to go up here and change the formatting of all my selected cells to accounting. Okay. Okay, and let's say I sold my Apple stock at 185 because why not? Okay, now capital gains. So what are capital gains? Well, you take the sale price and subtract from it your purchase price. That gives you your profit or capital gain from this trade. At this point, a lot of newbies are tempted to pull out their calculator and find out what 200 minus 150 is. Okay, but the thing about Excel is that you never have to use a calculator outside of Excel because every cell in Excel has a built-in calculator, right? So if you're using a separate calculator while using Excel, okay, it means that okay, you're a newbie, you don't know how to use Excel properly. Okay, all calculations that you need to perform can be performed, okay, in Excel. What you need to give Excel is the numbers, okay, that you want to perform calculation on, okay, and what kind of calculation. In other words, you need to give Excel an expression to evaluate. So to calculate capital gains, we need to subtract 200 minus 150. Okay, that's how we're going to get the capital gains. So we're going to tell Excel to do that for us. We're going to give it that expression, and we're going to start with typing in an equal to sign. So when you begin a cell with equal to sign, that tells Excel that okay, what you're going to give them is something to calculate, an expression to evaluate. Okay, so I'm going to say 200 minus 150. Okay. So what I have done is I have inserted an expression here. I have not inserted a value. I have inserted an expression. Now the output of that expression is a value. Okay. So as soon as I press enter, okay, the contents of the cell will change to the output of the expression. Some people call an expression a formula, right? So formula, output of the formula. Okay. And by default, what is displayed in a cell is always the output of an expression. Okay. But if you want to see what's the expression that led to this particular output, you can double click on the cell and it'll show you the expression that you typed in that resulted in the output that you were seeing. Okay, so what is being saved here in this cell is not the number 50. What is being saved in this cell is the expression or the formula 200 minus 150, the output of which is 50, which is often displayed, okay, as the cell content. So what is recorded in a cell is not necessarily what will be displayed on the cell. Okay, what is recorded is the formula. What is contained in the cell is the formula. What is being shown is the output of the formula. Okay. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I make a lot of typos. Okay. So if I have to type in all these expressions, okay, I'm going to mess something up, leave out a 0 or a decimal point. Okay, so what's the solution for me? So instead of typing in numbers, you can type in an expression that contains cell addresses. Okay, and what Excel will do in that case is it'll use the numbers contained in the cell that you are addressing in your formula. So instead of typing in equal to 200 minus 150, I can type in the address of the cell that contains the number 200. Okay, so the address of that cell is D4. Now Excel immediately realizes that this is an address, and Okay, it highlights the cell whose address you typed in, so you can double check whether you are inserting the right cell or not. Okay, now whenever Excel will come across D4 in the expression, what it'll do, it'll go to cell D4, whatever number is there, it'll bring that to the formula and use that in the formula. Similarly, instead of typing in minus 150, I can type in the address of the cell that contains the number that I want to use here. Okay, so if you had like very large numbers, okay, you don't have to worry about copying them because you can just insert their cell reference and Excel will go and get what you need from that cell. You press enter, it gives you the same answer, 50, but this time it's smart enough to realize that the input of those expressions are formatted in accounting format, so the output should also be in the accounting format. So did that for us. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I make typos in typing addresses as well. So is there any hope for me? Well, here's what you can do. You don't even have to type in a cell address. If you want to insert a cell address in a formula or an expression, all you need to do is click on the cell whose address you want to insert. And Excel will automatically insert the address of the cell that you just clicked on. Okay, so instead of typing in D4, click on D4. Okay, so no chance of messing that up. You still have to type in the minus sign, but instead of typing in C4, I simply click on C4. Okay. So this is called an expression that contains references to cells or cell addresses. $50. Okay, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to insert an expression to calculate the capital gains for Apple. Okay, so I want you to not type in any numbers or cell addresses in creating your expression. I want you to click on the cells that you want to include in your formula or expression. Done? Okay. So D5 and click on C5. Enter. Okay. Okay, well, that was fun. I've got more stock trades for you. Okay, number 3, let's say Amazon, right? Let's say I bought it for $300 and I sold it for $450 because why not? Okay, these are made up numbers as well, so we might as well indulge our fantasies. Okay. And the 4th stock trade was American Airlines. Bought it for $50, sold it for $125. Okay. Now, here's another trick I want to show you. So this first column, trade number, you can see that the contents are a series of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So instead of having to individually type out each number, you can use the autofill feature of Excel. Okay. So let's say that we want to enter 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Instead of typing it in, what you can do is you can select the first few cells of the series. So I'm going to select the cells that contain 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you'll notice that there is a tiny dot or a square on the lower hand side of the lower right corner of the selection. Okay. Point your mouse above it until it turns into this black cross, this solid black cross. Okay. Once it turns into this solid black cross, it means that you have grabbed what is called the autofill handle. Okay. Now, click and hold down your click. Don't let your click go. And with your other finger, okay, drag the pointer across the cells that you want to be filled with the remaining numbers in the series. So I want it to go all the way down to 10. So I'm going to select, okay, from cells A8 all the way to A13. Okay. So I'm just dragging it down, and once I let go, you'll see that it's auto-filled those cells with the remaining numbers of the series. Right? So Excel is kind of smart. It knows that if you're starting something with 1, 2, 3, 4, what follows probably is 5, 6, 7, 8. And you can do that with like days of the week. You can do this with months, calendar years. Okay. So, okay, that much less typing to do. Let's do one more stock trade. Okay, what's your favorite stock? Anyone? Yeah, Google. Okay, let's say we bought it for $230 and we sold it for $270. Okay. Now we need to calculate capital gains for them again. So do we need to enter expressions again? Well, you can, but you know, it'll get tedious pretty fast. Like if you just have 5 stock trades, that's easy, but if you had like 100, then it's going to get old pretty fast. So what you can do is you can copy the formula, okay, that you entered for calculating capital gains in row 5, okay, to row 6. So in the cell E5, you entered this formula, D5 minus C5. Now, what Excel remembers this as, okay, take the number 1 cell to the left and subtract from it the number that is 2 cells to the left. Okay, that's the instruction that is being recorded here. And that same instruction works for other cells as well, because when we are calculating the capital gain for Amazon, that's again what we wanted to do. Take the number 1 cell to the left, subtract from it 2 cells to the left. Okay. So we are just going to copy this formula and paste it in the cell below. So how do you copy a formula? Well, you click on the cell that contains the formula you want to copy. Okay. And then you can use the copy icon in the home ribbon, or you can use Control-C. So now you see this, what is called a marching ants selection. It looks like a bunch of ants marching around. Okay. Now this has been selected for copying, and now you're going to select the destination cell where you want the formula to be copied to, and you might be tempted to simply hit Control-V and as paste, but when you're copying and pasting formulas, you have to do a special kind of paste. Okay. So in order to do that, on the home ribbon, you'll see this paste icon. And next to it is a menu arrow. So click on that menu arrow. And it says what kind of paste you want to do. So select paste formulas. Enter. And voila. Okay. So it's copied a formula. The output of that is 150. But let's make sure that the inputs of the formula are correct. So let's double click on the destination cell and see what exactly appears in the destination cell. Well, we had copied D5 minus C5, but when it pasted, it changed it to D6 minus C6. So Excel is smart enough to realize that if you're copying the output of the formula one cell down, then the inputs of the formula should also come from one cell down. Okay, so it automatically changed the inputs from D5 and C5 to C6 and D6. Okay, so that was easy. Now you can paste the other cells as well, but I'm going to show you again how to use the autofill feature. So go to select the cell that you want that contains the formula that you want to copy, and then grab the autofill handle, okay, by pointing your mouse to the lower right hand corner of the cell that contains the formula until it becomes this kind of a cross. Grabbing the autofill handle is also a skill that will you need a little bit of practice, and click and drag it down all through the cells where you want the formula to be copied. So I want it to be copied all the way through cell E8. So I'm going to make sure that it's selected and then let go. Okay, and fill, I'm going to say copy cells, yes. And I'm going to dissect the formula and see, make sure that the correct formula is being pasted, and the answer is yes, right? So if you had a table where you had to do this 100 times, it would be so much easier. You just need to drag it across 100 rows. Okay. Now, I messed up. I forgot to include some important information. Okay, so how many stocks did I trade, right? It's unlikely that I traded only one stock of Tesla and one stock of Apple, right? I had multiple quantities, so I need to take that into account in calculating how much money I made in total, like how many stocks of each company I traded. So there needs to be a quantity column that I forgot to insert, and that column needed to be right after the stock name. So this column C, that is purchase price right now, it needed to be quantity column, right? But no harm done. We can insert a new blank column in the middle of a table. And the way you do that is you select the column that is going to be, okay, on the right of your new column. So I want my new column to appear between B and C. Okay. So I'm going to select column C by clicking on the column C name. And then I'm going to right click on it. On a Mac, you would have to double click, and this would give you what's called a right click menu. And then in the right click menu, you select insert, and voila, it's inserted a blank row. Okay. And okay, now it pushed the rest of the columns to the right. So the purchase price used to be in column C, now it's in column D. Okay. Now you might say, isn't that going to mess up the formulas? Because the formula is referring to column C, but column C is blank. Well, Excel is smart. It's going to update the formulas to reflect the new location of the numbers that you had selected when you had inserted the formulas. Right? So it's keeping track. You wanted this number 150. So if you change the location 150, it updates the cell addresses accordingly. Okay, so that your calculations are not messed up. So I'm going to insert a new column here, quantity. And let's say I traded 15 units of Tesla and 60 units of Apple and 25 units of Amazon and 10 units of American Airlines and 45 units of Google. Okay. Now, I need to modify the formula for capital gains to take into account that I'm trading multiple quantities. Right? So I'm going to go to the formula for the first stock. Okay, so this is my profit or capital gain on one stock trade, but I traded 15 of them, so okay, this profit has to be multiplied by the quantity 15. Now at this point, a lot of people might be tempted to simply add multiplied by 15. So multiplication in Excel is indicated by the asterisk, right? Now what's wrong with this? Yes.
I believe it's PEMDAS.
Yes. So the order of operations by default is that it does multiplication first. So it's going to multiply B4 and C4, and the resulting number is going to subtract from B4, which is not how you want it to do it. You want it to do this part first and then do the multiplication. So you have to insert parentheses around the expression that you want Excel to evaluate first before multiplying. Okay, so first calculate the capital gain per stock and then multiply it by the total number of stock trades. Okay, a very common error students make is that they don't include parentheses in their expressions when they should be, and so they get a incorrect answer. Okay. So it's updated. Now, instead of individually modifying the remaining formulas, what I can do is I can overwrite the old formulas with a copy of the new formula. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the cell that contains the revised correct formula and then use the autofill handle to overwrite the old formulas. You get that? Right, so numbers, if you calculate, so everywhere now it's multiplying by the quantity. Okay, do you guys need a break? It's break time. No? Okay, we're almost done, so we'll just run over this. Yes?
Is the quantity for American Airlines supposed to be 19 or 10?
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to check.
So I made an error, supposed to be 10. I said 10, but I meant 19. But I'm going to correct it. And notice as soon as I press enter, the output of the formula is going to change, reflecting the input change. Okay. So that's another great thing about using formulas or expressions in Excel, is that if one of your values change, then all your other calculations, which are now going to be wrong, which depended on the old value, will automatically get updated with the correct value. Okay, so what would I like to do next? Well, the next thing I want to do, okay, so let's stop at 5 trades. Now I want to add up and see how much capital gains I've had in total. So I'm just going to delete the rest of the numbers. I'm going to select them and press delete, and it's gone. Okay, so I want the total capital gains to appear, okay, below the capital gains column. So I'm going to insert a formula here or expression here that will ask Excel to add up all the capital gains, right? So I'm going to start with an equal to, and then click on the first cell, then type in plus, click on the second cell, type in plus, click on the third cell, type in plus, click on the fourth cell, type in plus, and click on the last cell. Okay. Press enter, and it's going to give me the sum total. Okay. Now, clicking and then typing plus, clicking, typing plus, it was fine as long as there were only 5 numbers to add up, but if there were like 100, that could get old pretty fast, right? So is there a easier way to add up numbers in Excel rather than say type this, plus this, plus this, plus this? Yes. Okay. Excel exists to make our life less tedious. Okay, so there's always a quicker way to do something, shorter way to do something. So you can use what is called a function. So a function is a pre-built formula. All those plus signs are already inserted in there. All you have to do is tell Excel, okay, what are the cells you want to add up, and it's going to insert those plus signs by itself. It's already inserted, right? So that saves you a lot of work. So we are going to use the sum function in Excel. So I'm going to delete my expression and replace it with the sum function. So like an expression, a function should always be preceded by an equal to sign. And then you're going to type in the letters SUM, sum. Okay. So now Excel knows what it needs to do is sum numbers up. And you need to tell Excel which numbers to sum up. Okay. So you need to provide it inputs. You need to give it the addresses of the cells that contains the number you want it to add up. And you always give it information or numbers in parentheses. Okay. So every function, okay, is going to ask you for numbers, and those numbers, those cells will always be in parentheses. Okay. So in this parenthesis, I want to tell Excel, okay, add up all the cells from F4 to F8. And the way to do that is to type in F4 colon F8. Right? And you'll see that it selects the cells that I'm telling it to include. So you can double check visually whether you've included all the cells that you want to add up or not. Okay? And then you close the parenthesis, or you can simply press enter. Okay, and it gives you the sum. Right? Now, okay, I don't know about you guys, but I always feel scared when I have to type in numbers, even cell addresses. I'm going to make an error. So luckily, we don't need to do that in functions. We don't need to type in the cell addresses. Okay, so what you need to do is, once you begin the parenthesis, simply select the cells that you want to be included in the function, and Excel will insert the appropriate code to include them. Right? So I just selected them, press enter, and there's my total. Okay. Now, this number, okay, is different from these other numbers because this is a total of the numbers above. So I want that to be obvious. Right? So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to, on the cell to the left, I'm going to type in text total with a colon. And then by default, all text is left aligned in a cell, but I want it to appear closer to the number because then it makes it clear what this number is. So I'm going to change the default alignment and make it right aligned by clicking on the right aligned button on the home ribbon. Okay. So now it appears closer to my number. So that looks right. Also, I want there to be a line that is inserted just above the total to make it more obvious that this is a total. So the way you can do that is you can select a cell, and now I'm going to add a border to this cell. Now when you print out a worksheet, right, these cell lines that you see here are not going to be printed. Right? If you want to see them, you want to make them visible, you have to add borders around your cells. So I'm going to add a border, and the border options are also in the home ribbon. Okay, you have like see a window button, and there's a drop down menu, and what I want to do is I want to add not a double, Okay, let's go back. Let's select the cell above, the one that contains the total. We'll add a border to this cell. I'm going to add a thick bottom border. Okay. And so this makes it obvious, like it's a total thing there, right? It gives some kind of a partition. You can add borders around your entire table. Okay, so if you select all the contents of the cell, go to the borders button and select all borders. And now it's going to add borders around all cells, right? So it's nicer. Now I want to change the look of these cells to make them not only more pleasing to the eye but easier to read. And so one of the things I want to do is I want to make the column headings bolder so they stand out. So I can select all the cells that contain column headings and then click on the bold button. And I can even change the font size a little bit, make them stand out even more. Make it size 14. And also the contents are not being displayed properly, so I'm going to expand the column width of column D, column F, and column B. Right? So nothing's being overshadowed. Now, these trade numbers, I want them to appear in the center of the cells. Numbers by default are aligned to the right, but you can override the default alignment. So I'm going to select the cells, and then I'm going to click on the center aligned icon at the top, center text. And you know what? I should do that same for the heading too. Okay. And you know what? I want to do that for the stock name and the quantities as well. I want to center align them. Looks nicer. Okay. Now, I want the title of the table, my stock trades, to appear at the top of the table, somewhere here in the center. Now, as it seems, I can either insert it in C2 or D2, right? But that's not exactly quite the center. So here's what I'm going to do. Okay, I am going to merge. Okay, so first I'm going to copy the contents from cell A1 to C2, and I can simply move it as well. So if you want to move the contents of a cell, okay, you point your mouse, okay, in the bottom middle, right, until it turns into this hand icon. So if it's a hand icon, it means you're ready to grab the contents and take it away. So I'm going to grab the contents of this cell and move it to cell C2. Okay. Still not quite in the center, right? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to select cells C2 and D2 together. Both of them I'm selected. And then I'm going to find this button that says Merge and Center. Click on it. Yes. The Merge and Center. So I'm going to select cells C and D2. And then there's this button Merge and Center. So what that's going to do is that it's going to have cell C2 swallows cell D2. And so there is no more cell D2. There's only cell C2 which has expanded, covered cell D2, right? If you click on it, the cell address is C2, okay? D2 no longer exists anymore. Okay. I highlight it, okay. Finally, I want to calculate how much tax I owe on my capital gains, right? So how do you do that? Well, to calculate how much tax you owe, you need to know your tax rate, right? And then you need to multiply your capital gains with your tax rate. Now, I'm going to insert my tax rate in a separate cell so that I can use it in my formulas, okay, by referring to that cell. So I'm going to insert, let's say my tax rate is 18%, so I have to pay 18% tax, right? So I'm going to insert 18%, right? Make sure to include the percent sign because 18% is very different from just the number 18, okay? And in the cell to the left of that, I'm going to type in tax rate. And I'm going to align this to the right, while my tax number, I'm going to align it to the left. So it looks obvious what this refers to. It's my tax rate. Now, why not put the number 18% and tax rate in the same cell? The thing is that if you need to use a number in a formula, it must be in a cell by itself. It cannot have any text around it. You cannot use a cell that contains text in your formulas. So if you're going to need to use 18% in a formula later, make sure 18% is in a cell by itself. Okay. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate my tax owed. And I'm going to insert an expression for Excel to evaluate. Okay, so my tax owed is going to be my tax rate, and I'm going to click on the cell containing my tax rate multiplied by my capital gains. I'm going to click on the cell that calculates that. Okay, and then I press enter and it tells me the tax owed. Now the cool thing about doing it this way is that, let's say later on you realized you made a typo somewhere. Let's say that your Tesla sale price was not 200 but it was 210. Right? So all you need to do is go and correct the number here, change it to 210, and then it updates everything. So the new sale price means there's going to be a different capital gains, which means your capital gains total is going to be different, which means that your tax owed is going to be different, and all that gets automatically updated because everything is linked to this one cell. Okay. Now let's say that you wanted to do these calculations for a different scenario where your tax rate is 20%. Okay, maybe you have to pay taxes in two different countries. So in one country, they charge you 18%, another country, they charge you 20%. So you want to redo these calculations and see how much tax you're going to owe for 20%. Now, one way to do that is to simply change this 18% number to 20%, and that'll update the calculation and show you, okay, your new tax rate for that scenario. But then it's going to override your 18% tax amount. So you don't want that. You want one worksheet that shows your calculations for 18%, another worksheet that shows your calculations for 20%. So what you can do is you can duplicate this worksheet, okay? And the way you can duplicate a worksheet is by right-clicking on the worksheet name. So it says sheet 1 over here, right? When you right-click on a Mac, you double-click, and you bring up the right-click menu. And from the right-click menu, you're going to select Move or Copy. Now make sure that create a copy box is checked. And it's going to ask you where you want the copy to appear. Well, I want it to appear in the same workbook, so my first workbook, that's where I want it to appear. And where do I want it to appear? Do I want it to appear before sheet 1, or do I want it to appear at the end of all the sheets? Just one sheet, it doesn't really matter. Okay. Click OK, and you'll see that immediately a new sheet has appeared. By default, okay, it's named after your original sheet with number 2 in parentheses to indicate this is a second copy. Okay, but you can rewrite these default names, right? So the original sheet, let's rename it as, okay, double click on it and call it tax 18%. And the new worksheet that we created, let's rename that tax 20%. Now, both of these sheets contain the exact same data and information, the same formulas, same formatting, everything, right? But we want the tax 20% sheet to reflect the 20% tax rate. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the tax 20 worksheet, and where it says 18%, we're going to change it to 20%. And then we're going to press enter, and it's going to show us our taxes in the scenario where our tax is 20%, right? So you have created two tables now. One shows your tax at 18%, the other one shows it at 20%. I'm also going to highlight the column headings here by filling them with a background color. So I've selected the cells containing the column headings, and then I'm going to go to this fill color button, and then I'm going to click on the down arrow and select a fill color, maybe gray, and that's going to color those cells with the background in gray, whatever you fancy. Okay, so that's pretty much it. This is the basic proficiency you're going to need in doing assignments in Excel for this course. A few tips and tricks that you'll need for some particular activities, I'll teach them when we come across. But if you are able to follow along and do the things that I did here right now, you're all set as far as Excel is concerned for this course. So I'm going to stop here. If you have any questions, if you want me to show you something again, let me know. Otherwise, we are done for today, and I'll see you guys next time. And we'll